Testosterone. It's a word you hear thrown around constantly, right? It's tied to everything from sports to anti-aging. But what is it really? Well, today we're going to cut through all that noise. We're going to get to the bottom of one of the body's most powerful and, let's be honest, most misunderstood chemical messengers. Okay, let's get into it.
So let me just start by asking you this. What single molecule out there can build muscle, make a voice deeper, and also fuel desire? It's a huge player in both male and female health, and by the end of this, you're going to see exactly why. The answer, of course, is testosterone. So here's our game plan. First, we'll cover how the body actually makes and manages this hormone. Then, we'll look at its starring role in puberty, its lifelong job in keeping adults healthy, what happens when those levels get out of whack, and finally, we'll tackle the big one, separating fact from fiction when it comes to myth, media, and medicine.
All right, first up, the body's control system. See, before we can get to all the dramatic stuff, we really need to understand the brilliant system that's working behind the scenes to keep it all in check. Okay, so at its most basic level, testosterone is the main male sex hormone. But, and this is super important, it's also absolutely vital for women's health, just in smaller amounts. And chemically speaking, it's a steroid hormone, which means our bodies build it from cholesterol. That structure is exactly what lets it slip right into our cells and get to work. So where does the body actually make this stuff? Well, in males, it's pretty much a one-stop shop. About 95% of it is made in the testes. For women, though, it's more of a group effort. Production is spread out between the ovaries, the adrenal glands, and it's even created when other hormones get converted elsewhere in the body. Okay, so the body is making this incredibly powerful hormone, but how does it know when to hit the gas or pump the brakes? It's definitely not random. It's all managed by this incredibly elegant system called a feedback loop, a kind of command chain that connects the brain to the rest of the body.
This system is called the HPG axis. Now, that sounds complicated, but here's how it works. First, the hypothalamus in your brain sends out a signal. That signal goes to the pituitary gland and tells it to release a couple of key hormones. One of those, called luteinizing hormone, or LH, travels down to the testes or ovaries and yells, "Hey, make some testosterone." And here's the genius part. Step 4. Once testosterone levels get high enough, they send a signal all the way back up to the brain that says, "Okay, we're good, you can slow down now." It's a built-in off switch to make sure things don't go haywire. Honestly, the best way to think about this is like the thermostat in your house. Your brain sets the ideal temperature, the perfect level for testosterone. If the level drops, the heat kicks on and production ramps up. Once it hits that sweet spot, the system shuts itself off. It's a beautiful, self-regulating loop, keeping everything perfectly balanced. Now let's see what happens when this system goes into absolute overdrive during one of the most traumatic times in a person's life, puberty. This is where you see the power of testosterone on full display. During puberty, that HPG axis just cranks up the volume, causing this massive surge in testosterone. And this is what kicks off its anabolic, or tissue-building, effects. We're talking a huge increase in muscle mass and strength. It also fuels that big growth spurt by making your bones grow longer and denser. And then, fun fact, it's also the hormone that eventually seals the growth plates on your bones, which is what stops you from getting any taller. And right alongside all that growth, you see its androgenic effects, the development of those secondary male characteristics. The voice gets deeper because the vocal cords literally get thicker, facial hair, body hair, it all starts to grow, and the reproductive organs mature. It is a total physical transformation, and it's all orchestrated by this one little molecule. But here's the thing, its job is nowhere near done after the teenage years, not even close. Testosterone has a crucial lifelong job in keeping us healthy and functioning well into adulthood. Just take a look at this. You can see how essential it is for both men and women. Look at all the jobs they share. It's a key driver for libido, for bone health, for keeping muscle on, and for influencing mood and energy in both sexes. Then for men, it has some unique jobs, like making sperm production possible and stimulating red blood cell creation. And for women, it's the raw material their bodies use to make their primary sex hormone, estradiol. Testosterone levels kind of have their own life story. After a quick little surge right after birth, they stay super low until puberty hits the launch button. Levels usually peak in our 20s and early 30s. And after that, there's a slow, steady, and totally normal decline of about 1% a year. That's just a natural part of aging. So that's how it's supposed to work. But what happens when that carefully managed system gets thrown off balance?
Well, whether the levels go too low or too high, the consequences can be pretty significant. On the left, you see the signs of clinically low testosterone, things like fatigue, loss of muscle, mood changes. But on the right, you see the risks of abnormally high levels, which, to be clear, is almost always caused by taking external anabolic steroids. And this can lead to really serious problems like heart damage, blood clots, and even testicular atrophy, because the body's own production just shuts down. In women, it can cause something called virilization. The main takeaway here is pretty clear. Balance is everything.
So how do doctors even figure out if there's a problem? It usually starts with a simple blood test done in the morning when levels are naturally at their peak. If there's a real clinical need for treatment, something called testosterone replacement therapy, or TRT, is an option. And the root cause usually boils down to one of two things. Either there's a problem at the factory itself, the testes, or, going back to our thermostat, the signals coming from the brain are malfunctioning. Okay, for our last section, let's step out of the biology textbook and into the real world. Because this hormone isn't just a molecule, is it? It's a cultural phenomenon, surrounded by all kinds of myths, media hype, and medical debate.
I mean, we see this stuff everywhere. In sports, you have the constant issue of anabolic steroid misuse, which comes with huge health risks. In medicine, you have the explosion of low T clinics, which has kicked off this huge debate about whether we're helping people with a real medical need or just trying to medicate the normal process of aging. And then there's maybe the biggest myth of them all.
Testosterone is constantly being simplified down to just the aggression hormone. But let's be crystal clear. It is not a simple aggression molecule. The science just doesn't back that up. Sure, it can influence things like competitiveness or drive, but the actual link to aggressive behavior is way more complex. It's heavily influenced by things like your environment and psychology. It is not a rage switch you can just flip on and off. So, at the end of the day, here's where we land. We've seen how this one single molecule is basically a master architect of the human body, from puberty all the way through adulthood. But that leaves us with a much bigger question to chew on. This hormone built our bodies, sure, but how does our understanding of it, and maybe more importantly, our misunderstanding of it, continue to shape our world?